Finished?
No. Now, I'm not blaming you personally, Adam, because this is so.
Oh, well, that's awfully large of you.
No, it's not your fault. All I'm saying is, why let this deplorable system seep into our courts of law where women are supposed to be equal?
Mostly, I think, females get advantages.
We don't want advantages. And we don't want prejudices.
Don't get excited, honey, and don't. Oh, you're giving me the Britain mole, right?
Well, what did she try to do? She tried to...
ご機嫌いかがですか? Watanabe Dan desu. On today's episode of Backward Engineering Your Project, we're going to talk about Adam's Rib, a movie made in 1948, but still a model of what anyone who's looking to get into film production, film writing, film distribution, film marketing, acting, directing, whatever, should take a look at. Because it's in its own special way, practically perfect. And what do I mean by that? I mean that unlike most of the movies of its era, which tended to be rather superficial and kind of bound by the time in which they were made, Adam's Rib is something that reaches across the decades and comes across as something that is surprisingly relevant today. And yes, there are cringy moments, as anything that was made 70 years ago is going to appear to be to our modern sensibilities. For example, no one uses a cell phone in it. But other than that, it really shows how George Cukor, Katharine Hepburn, Spencer Tracey, Garson, Kanin, Ruth, Gordon, and all the other below-the-line crew were able to put everything together in one nice, neat little package. Let's start by talking about how it fulfills a lot of the unspoken requirements of good screenwriting. First of all, unlike most movies, which tend to have a bias toward the screenplay being either strong in terms of story, character, or scene, Adam's Rib is actually phenomenally strong in all three areas. Although, admittedly, of the three, scene is probably the least impressive simply because it is basically a Talking Heads movie. Yet within that Talking Heads environment, it provides a lot of joy all the way through. Let's first talk about how it is structured from the three-part dramatic storytelling perspective. First of all, in three-part dramatic structure, as we know, right now there's this whole idea that the three acts are fairly standard and have been so since the beginning of time. Well, that might be true in terms of Western storytelling. It's not really true of Eastern storytelling. But even from an Eastern storytelling perspective, it still hits a lot of its marks. So the first act does a number of different functions. First of all, it introduces us to our main character. Now, because Cukor and company realized that the real action of the movie wasn't going to start for a while, they begin it with what we call topspin. And what's topspin? Topspin is something that might involve the main characters or something that the main characters will become cognizant of, but it's not necessarily an introduction to who the main players are. And in fact, we see that's exactly what's happening here. We meet Judy Holliday, who is walking around a very real New York City. Remember, this is 1948, the same year as On the Town, the same year that a lot of the quote-unquote New York School of Filmmakers were starting to take advantage of real Manhattan locations as opposed to studio-built sets. So we see her stalking her husband, finally catching up with him, and then popping a shot at him. But instead of this just being a total tragedy or something that seems like it comes out of a film noir, look at the end of the scene. At the end of the scene, we see her clutching her husband. So we realize that in its own perverse way, this is part of their regular marital play. From here, we cut to the apartment of Amanda and Adam. And we learned that they're both lawyers. Now, this is about 30 years out from women getting the right to vote. So certainly Amanda, being a lawyer, is not something that we would take as the common career goal of a woman of the era. And that might have been considered off-putting to people. Therefore, the casting of Katharine Hepburn was essential. Why? Because she had always been an outsider. She had been one of the females in the 1930s who had promoted the use of women wearing slacks. She and Marlene Dietrich, between the two of them, made that a fashion statement. And there was some concern that it was bringing women down and making them more like men. And we see that they're going to play on this. They're going to play on a lot of different stereotypes that nonetheless are effective. We also meet Adam. Adam is her husband, and Adam is played by Spencer Tracey in kind of that same kind of gruff fashion that he was known to play. Note, too, that at the beginning, we see Amanda up and ready to go. Adam is still in bed asleep. Why is this? Well, the obvious answer for this is that he has that kind of sense that she will take care of things. It's an unspoken assumption that will come into play later on during the course of the movie. Note, too, that Cukor is being very, very cagey with the production code, which said at the time that you could not have overt images of sex. And having a couple in bed at the same time would have been a warning that they might be doing the naughty deed, even if they're already married. Note, too, that this is a single bed. So the movie does conform to the Hollywood rules that they need to, at least one of them needs to have both feet on the floor. And in this case, that's Amanda. She sees in the newspaper about Judy Holliday shooting Tom Ewell and is interested in it, and we automatically see the beginning of what the movie is going to be about, because we see that she and Adam do not agree on what happened in this case. This is what is known as the inciting incident. Adam then learns that he is going to have to prosecute the case, and he doesn't want to do it. And when he first tells Amanda, he's kind of joking. She, however, is going to take the bar. She is the one who's going to take up the offer and say that she is going to defend Doris, Judy Holliday, and that will be what the crux of the movie is about.
Grace?
Yeah?
Did you ever hear about the straw that broke the camel's back?
Many times.
Yeah, well, it just happened again, right on that phone. The last straw on a female camel.
Right on that phone?
Yeah. Now, you better take all this down. This is important.
Go ahead.
There's a woman named, wait a minute. Hey, Bobby, bring me the morning papers in here right away, will you please? Well, whatever her name was, she shot her husband last night.
Served him right.
I'm not joking. This is big.
The first plot point comes at a party where Adam and Amanda are hosting their friends, including their annoying next-door neighbor, David Wayne, who is spoken of as being someone who is not that far from being a woman. So we all know that he's being read as gay, even though we weren't allowed to say that in 1948 either. It didn't stop George Cukor, who is gay himself, from putting it in the image. And during the course of the party, we get to see them watching a home video. And in this home video, we see them happily tearing up the mortgage to a place that they had bought in the country. So we see domestic bliss, but that is contrasted with the way they are feeling about each other. Note the expressions on Adam and Amanda's faces here. They are not happy. It contrasts deliberately with what's on the screen. So even in the middle of this highly talky scene, Cukor has been able to invade it with a little bit of his own moxie. And we see after the party that they're having a fight.
I know what you're going to say. That he should have been convicted too, but he wasn't. And you're not going to put this poor soul away just because she had the misfortune to be born a female.
Just one word in
Not
it.
if I could help
Wise,
it.
couldn't
What?
I? Could I please get a word in edgewise?
Well, go ahead.
Not one syllable. Not one syllable of
You're
what
too
you have
excited.
been blabbering here tonight.
You always
makes-
do that when you get excited.
But the fight, as loud as it seems to be at the very beginning, soon returns to their lovey-dovey stance. This is going to get worse as the story progresses, because Amanda is not about to give up what she feels is her birthright. We all know that the second act is where a movie can run into its biggest problems, and yet the second act here feels fairly smooth. In new screenwriting nomenclature, it has become popular to talk about a key scene, which is the scene that comes directly in the middle of the movie. Think of it in terms of something like The Wizard of Oz. What's the key scene in The Wizard of Oz? Of course, they arrive at Oz. In this case, it's all building up to them showing up in court. And we notice that this scene does indeed deliver. We see that they are going to be fighting each other. We see they're going to be on opposite sides. But while they're on opposite sides, they're still going to be friendly with one another. But now that we're in court, and the key scene is considered to be the turning point between when rising action becomes falling action and everything becomes a consequence of it, We see that their relationship begins to falter. We see that that whatever pent up anger that the two have had is going to start becoming more and more pronounced as they fight opposite each other. And certainly the beginning of the court case, contrary to societal norms at that time, seems to be going in Amanda's favor. She brings out three women who, note this importantly, go in descending order of femininity. The first is a scholar.
Dr. Brody, would you be good enough to state your age?
33.
Your occupation?
Chemist.
Now, will you tell the court what position or positions you now hold?
Gladly. Chief Consulting Chemist, Institute for Advanced Studies. Director, Brody Halleck Laboratories. Civilian Consultant, United States Army Chemical Warfare Service. Advisor to Supply Officer, British Embassy. Director of Chemical Field Research, United States Department of Agriculture. That's this year.
The next person up is a woman who, because of seniority, because of the union she is in, is now the foreman of the company.
And this promotion placed under you, how many?
383.
Any men?
Mostly.
They didn't complain.
Couldn't. Seniority.
Does your husband object to your employment?
No.
Is he employed?
Yes.
Where?
Under me.
Note, too, that she does not have the femininity of the first woman. She is a lot more tough-looking, but she's still completely competent, and she's still making her point. We realize that she doesn't need to be that kind of physical attractive that the first one was. The third is the most important, and this is Hope Emerson, memorable in being in movies such as Caged and other film noir films where she was a model of toughness.
You see, I've done the finish where I lift the champ with his barbell together.
What?
Oh, yeah, this was a good act. You see, they lift. And then the last guy does a one-hand 350 barbell lift. Then while he's still got it up, I come on and lift him with his barbell together. Peel down, see, so they could tell I was a woman.
Remarkable.
Oh, yeah, I used to get a good hand.
She has almost no traces of femininity, including her ability to tumble. She, in fact, picks Adam up. So this is a completely emasculating, humiliating moment for him. And we see that what is happening in the court, while Amanda is enjoying it, is starting to make him feel very threatened and him not being sympathetic to her any longer. This asserts itself in this massage scene. In it, we see that they are, as always, being very touchy-feely with each other. But when he has a chance, he slaps her on the behind, which is a motif that had been repeated from earlier scenes in the movie, in a playful way. Now it's not so playful.
You meant that, didn't you? You really meant that.
Why, no,
Yes, you did. I can tell. I know your touch. I know a slap from a slug.
Well, okay.
I'm not so sure it is. I'm not so sure I care to expose myself to typical, instinctive, masculine brutality.
Oh, come
And
now,
it felt not
come.
only as though you meant it, but as though you felt you had a right to. I can tell.
What have you got back there? Radar equipment?
She accuses him of assaulting her. And we agree with her because we know that pat was actually more of a slug than a pat. We know that he is, in fact, angry with what she's doing. And we see that their relationship is hitting new, shall we say, greater challenges. The next scene in the court, when they're doing their summation, we see that Amanda is going to ask the jurors to imagine all of the people in the courtroom switching genders.
Go on now, use your imaginations. Think of her as a man sitting there accused of a like crime. A husband who was only trying to protect his home. Now hold it. Hold that impression and look at Beryl Kane. Look at her. Look at her hard. A man, a slick homewrecker, a third party. A wolf. You know the type, all right. Hold that impression and look at Mr. Attinger. And suppose him a woman. Try hard. Ah, yes, there she is, the guilty wife.
And remember that even though this movie, I know when I'm talking about it this way, makes it sound didactic, it's not. It's all played off in the context of it causing a strife between our main characters. Therefore, what what Cukor intended to be the quote-unquote message, which he was not using Western Union, he was using cinematic tropes to carry, is actually very effective, because we're not only seeing the message being relayed to us, but we're seeing it through the context of how it's impacting our characters. This is the way to get a message across.
How say you? Do you find the defendant guilty or not guilty?
We find the defendant not guilty.
Hearken to your verdict as it stands recorded. You say you find the defendant not guilty of the offense as charged in the indictment.
And this is where we reach the second plot point. And this is where we realize the difference between a lot of 1930s styles narratives and current narratives. And the difference is that in the 1930s and 1940s, the second plot point could do one of two things. It could either be, as is common today, be the moment where all is lost, moment where the characters are at their lowest point and something needs to be done. Or it could be the moment when whatever they had been fussing about for the entire movie up to this point is solved, and everything after that becomes a consequence. Think of Gone with the Wind. What happens at the second plot point? Rhett and Scarlett get married. What does that mean? It means that the last act is about the consequence of them getting married. There's hardly a moment of maximum strife. Same with Now Voyager. The second plot point comes when it's revealed that, or when Charlotte's mother finally drops dead. So Charlotte is in fact liberated, which has been the problem for the whole movie. And yet now we have to suffer the consequences. In this movie, it is no different. And we see that their marriage is now at a crisis point. They are really maybe even going to consider breaking up. Even though Amanda has won, we see that her marriage is now at a crisis point. And this crisis point is reached when she's celebrating with her next-door gay neighbor. And Adam comes in and catches them together.
Just pretend like they do on the stage, like Lunt and Fontaine. You be Lunt and I'll be Fontaine. The other way.
Hey.
All right. All right. Break it up.
Adam, listen to me, Adam.
Don't you handle me, lady. I'm not nutty. Not any more than the average. You said it yourself today, didn't you? You said anyone is capable of attack if provoked. You bet, including me. Yes. Don't you move, young man. You stand as still as you can be.
Now, Adam.
You said that before.
Now, Adam, you're sick. Please. What do you think you're doing?
Teaching a lesson. Him first, then comes yours. Now, get away, Amanda.
Adam, stop.
Get away, Amanda.
Don't you do it, Amanda.
Stop it, Adam. Stop it. You've no right. You can't do what you're doing. You've no right.
What?
No one has a right to...
In the same way that Doris Attinger broke in on her husband and his mistress. And look at how she reacts. She reacts by saying he doesn't have the right. He has won his point. Turns out he's not looking to actually kill them. He's actually with a licorice, I actually think it looks more like chocolate, but that's just me, gun. And she is now furious. Now their relationship has reached a real struggling point. And we see that it's going to meet its consequence in the next scene, which is the scene in the in the accountant's office as they're going over their taxes for the year. And we realize that they still have feelings for each other. We see that they're very, very wealthy as a couple. And yet, within that scene, we also see that they truly do need each other. They're truly helping each other, even though they are at loggerheads.
$337.41 issued to Martin L. Balmer. What's that? It's on the joint account.
Furrier.
Mending a coat.
Put it on mine, please.
Wait.
Coat was a present.
I know.
Well, I gave you the coat. Naturally, I expect you to keep it in repair.
Not at all.
But I want to.
I can't help that.
And finally, at the end of the scene, Spencer Tracy pretends to cry, and that works on Amanda.
Free and clear.
let's look at the movie in terms of its character development. The main character in this, and I would argue with other people about this, is Adam. And why is it Adam? Because he goes through the most changes in it. Yes, we can say that Amanda goes through a lot of changes as well, but her changes are more intellectual. His are more emotional. He's actually grappling with the fact that he has taken a lot of Amanda's success, a lot of Amanda's power for granted. And by the end of the movie, we see he has accepted that she is an equal. Yes, she's going to run for the Democratic position, for a position he's going to run for as a Republican. So we see the battle is going to continue. But note significantly, he's not trying to tell her not to do it. So yes, he's the one who experiences the most character change. And that's what's really ingenious about the way Garson, Kanin, and Ruth Gordon wrote this, is that they make it appear from either side that you can make an argument for who learned the most and what the happiness of the ending actually prefigures. And this is where we get how important it is to delineate your characters. They take advantage of the fact that Hepburn and Tracey were known for years to be almost a couple. I know. Nowadays we're hearing about how they were both gay and this was Hollywood's ultimate Twilight tandem. Whatever, doesn't matter. The fact is that they know how to complete each other's sentences. They know how to play off each other's personalities. They know how to be so comfortable as a couple together that we go along with it. We believe them. We like them. It also deals with very touchy issues. We deal with spousal abuse.
Now you're sure this wasn't just your imagination?
You don't get a split lip from imagination. She used to wait until I went to sleep. Then pow, pow.
We deal with gay men.
You've got me so convinced I may even go out and become a woman. Well, good night, all.
And he wouldn't have far to go either. What's the matter?
He can hear you.
We deal with couples who have patriarchal attitudes or are trying to break away from it. We deal with the fact that marriages have strife in them even under the most ideal circumstances.
Adam, please, I said all the wrong things. I don't know what's the matter with me. But you said the
Oh,
wrong
no,
things.
I haven't. I've said everything I meant.
Adam,
What?
don't you dare slam that door.
All right.
We see that people, when they're in a fight mode, will use triggers that are perhaps unfair. And yet, in the middle of all of that, we'll also have funny moments, such as in the middle of a heated court battle, the most contentious, we get a joke over the fact that that they both call each other Pinky.
What's that, a name?
Yes.
Whose?
The counsel for the defense.
Is that a Y or an IE?
Y for him, IE for me.
Where I think Adam's Rib is perhaps most relevant today is we have filmmakers who and advertising in the industry, which is totally shocking to me, where we're seeing attempts made to force a lesson rather than allowing people to watch the movie and use it as a source for debate. Adam's Rib, I feel, is a perfect example of bringing up a number of complex social issues and showing how they play out. This is a very egalitarian movie in the best sense of the word. It's showing how even people who are as different as these people can still have similarity and therefore an opportunity to win. And that is what Hollywood filmmaking is all about.
Shows that what I said was true. There's no difference between the sexes. Men, women, the same.
They are, huh?
Well, Maybe there is a difference, but it's a little difference.
Well, you know, as the French say.
What do they say?
Vive la différence.
Which means?
Which means hooray for that little difference.